Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into one of the most pivotal episodes in the entire Demon Slayer series, Episode 26, New Mission. This episode sits right at the hinge between the brutal intensity of the Asakusa and Tsutsumi Mansion arcs and the sweeping, life-altering developments that are about to unfold. It's a moment where the ground shifts beneath our feet, where the fragile sense of stability Tanjiro and his companions had been clinging to starts to crack wide open. And let me tell you, even if you've seen this episode multiple times, it still hits with the weight of a collapsing mountain. The episode opens with Tanjiro Kamado, still carrying the deep bruises and emotional scars from his recent battles, trudging alongside his companions through a quiet, winding mountain path. There's a heaviness to his every step, a weariness that goes beyond the physical toll of fighting demons. Nezuko, his sister, remains confined within her small wooden box, strapped securely to his back, a constant reminder of the dual burden he bears, protecting her from the sun and from herself. Zenitsu and Inosuke are there too, their personalities as mismatched and volatile as ever. Zenitsu is his usual bundle of nerves, whining and complaining about the endless march, while Inosuke barrels forward with his trademark ferocity, barely acknowledging the limits of his battered body. It's this familiar rhythm of exhaustion and bickering that sets the stage, making what comes next feel all the more jarring. As they continue their journey, the group encounters a familiar figure, Sabito, or rather, the haunting echo of him. In a moment that catches Tanjiro off guard, he sees Sabito's unmistakable form standing before him, his fox mask tilted slightly, his expression as stern and unyielding as it was during their days at the mountain training grounds. This vision isn't some idle daydream. It carries a sharp, almost tangible weight, rooted in the unresolved threads of Tanjiro's past. Sabito speaks with that same unflinching directness, questioning Tanjiro about his progress, about whether he's truly mastered the techniques they once struggled over together. There's no malice in it, just a relentless push, a reminder that survival demands more than instinct. It demands precision, repetition, flawless execution. The encounter leaves Tanjiro unsettled, his thoughts churning with memories of lost comrades and the relentless pressure to grow stronger, faster, before the next inevitable fight. They don't have long to dwell on these echoes of the past because their path soon brings them to a clearing where they reunite with two figures who have become pillars in their chaotic lives, Kana Tsuyuri and Aoi Kanzaki. The Butterfly Mansion, that serene yet disciplined sanctuary of healing and training, comes into view, and with it, the sense of returning to a place where wounds, both physical and otherwise, can begin to mend. Aoi greets them with her characteristic mix of exasperation and diligence, immediately launching into the grueling regimen of recovery. She doesn't waste a moment on pleasantries. These boys have pushed their bodies beyond breaking, and she is determined to hammer them back into shape. The training that follows is methodical, punishing, and utterly without mercy. Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke are put through a gauntlet of exercises designed to rebuild their strength from the ground up, full-body stretches that twist their limbs to their limits, repeated application of a foul-tasting medicinal paste that leaves their skin burning, and a relentless series of tasks that test every ounce of their endurance. It's in these scenes where the episode reveals so much about the cost of their battles. We see the raw, unfiltered toll that constant combat has taken. Tanjiro's shoulders, locked in knots from wielding his Nichiren blade through endless fights, refuse to loosen without days of forced stretching. Zenitsu's legs, trembling from the strain of his thunderclap and flash technique, buckle under the simplest demands. Inosuke, for all his wild bravado, can barely raise his arms without his muscles seizing in protest. Aoi's approach is unsparing. She forces them to confront the damage they have done to themselves, making them hold agonizing positions until their bodies submit, until the rigidity gives way to flexibility. There's a quiet fury in her efficiency, a recognition that if they don't reclaim their physical foundations, every swing of their blades will be slower, weaker, more likely to end in failure. And through it all, Tanjiro keeps his focus, enduring the pain without complaint, driven by the unyielding need to protect those he holds dear. As the days of punishing rehabilitation unfold, the episode shifts to a moment of profound personal reckoning for Tanjiro. In a clearing surrounded by the vibrant green of the mountain forest, he draws his sword and begins practicing the water-breathing forms that have defined his style since the beginning. But something is fundamentally wrong. The first form, Water Surface Slash, comes out jagged and incomplete, the blade stuttering halfway through its arc. He tries again, pouring everything he has into the motion, but the result is the same, a fractured strike, robbed of its fluidity. He pushes harder, cycling through the forms, desperation mounting with each failed attempt. The second form falters, the third collapses entirely, and by the time he reaches the 10th form, Constant Flux, the blade snaps cleanly in two. The sound of shattering steel echoes through the clearing, and Tanjiro stands there, staring at the broken halves in his hands, the weight of that failure crashing down on him. This moment is devastating in its simplicity. Tanjiro has survived demons that should have killed him, pushed his body through wounds that would fell lesser men, but here, in the quiet aftermath of battle, his foundation crumbles. The sword, his lifeline, the extension of his will, literally breaks apart because his body can no longer support the techniques that it once carried. There's no enemy to blame, no external force to overcome. It's just him confronting the limits that he has ignored for too long. The sense of helplessness is palpable, the realization that everything he has fought for could slip away not in a blaze of combat, but in the cold light of his own physical ruin. He sits there amid the wreckage of his weapon, grappling with the fear that he may never regain what has been lost. But even in this low point, the episode doesn't leave him stranded in despair. The Butterfly Mansion's purpose is not merely to mend flesh, it's to rebuild warriors. The relentless training continues, and slowly, painfully, the fruits of that labor begin to emerge. Tanjiro's body, forced to adapt through Aoi's unforgiving regimen, starts to reclaim what it had lost. The tightness in his shoulders loosens, his strikes regain their rhythm, and the forms that once eluded him begin to flow once more. It's a quiet triumph, hard-won and unglamorous, a testament to the sheer stubbornness required to claw back from the edge of collapse. The episode builds toward a moment of transition that carries an undercurrent of inevitability. As Tanjiro emerges from this crucible of recovery, his body tempered by weeks of unrelenting work, a new summons arrives. A crow, sleek and authoritative, descends to deliver a message that marks the end of this period of mending and the beginning of something far greater. The words it carries are straightforward, but loaded with consequence. A new mission, one that will pull Tanjiro away from the relative shelter of the Butterfly Mansion and thrust him back into the unrelenting storm of demon hunting. The precise nature of that mission hangs in the air, a promise of challenges that will test not just his repaired body, but the very core of his resolve. And that's where episode 26 leaves us, on the precipice of transformation. It's an episode that doesn't dazzle with flashy swordplay or demonic monstrosities, but instead lays bare the human cost of survival. We see Tanjiro and his companions stripped down to their most vulnerable states, forced to rebuild themselves piece by piece, muscle by strained muscle. The broken sword isn't just a literal fracture, it's a mirror held up to the fragility of everything they've accomplished. Every swing they've taken, every demon they've felled, has carved away at their capacity to keep fighting, and this episode forces them to reckon with that erosion. It's about the grind that happens out of sight, the days of pain and persistence that make the heroic clashes possible. What makes this episode so powerful is how it captures that feeling of being worn down to nothing and having to start over. Tanjiro's struggle isn't against some towering adversary. It's against his own failing body, the betrayal of the very instrument he relies on to protect his family. And yet, through the sheer, unrelenting effort demanded by Aoi's regimen, he begins to forge himself anew. It's a reminder that strength isn't a permanent state. It's something you have to claw back every single time it slips from your grasp. There's an emotional rawness to watching him break and rebuild, because it speaks to that universal truth. We all have moments where everything we've built feels like it's splintering apart, and the only way forward is to endure the slow, brutal process of making yourself whole again. Episode 26 stands as a vital bridge in the story, a moment where the characters are reminded that victory doesn't erase the damage it inflicts. It's preparation, it's reckoning, it's the forging of the resolve in the quiet spaces between battles. And as that crow delivers its message, you can feel the shift, the sense that everything they've endured up to this point has been building toward a new, inescapable challenge. This episode doesn't hand you spectacle. It gives you the foundation, the sweat-soaked groundwork that makes every triumph that follows matter. It's a masterclass in showing how the real fight often happens not in the heat of combat, but in the long, punishing aftermath, when you have to pick up the pieces and make yourself ready to stand again. So what do you think about this episode? Does the image of Tanjiro staring down at his shattered sword stick with you the way it does for me? Is it those moments of quiet, grinding determination that make the bigger battles resonate? Or is there another part of this episode that hits you just as hard? I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you've got your own take on what this episode means in the larger journey, drop it in the comments. And if you want to revisit this turning point or talk about what comes next, make sure you're subscribed, because there's so much more to unpack in this series. Thanks for spending this time with me. Let's keep exploring what makes Demon Slayer such an unflinching look at what it really takes to keep fighting.